The twin switch. This has long been regarded as the holy grail of stealing an extra substitution at halftime in a match. But there is at least the beginnings of some evidence that somebody may have actually conducted a twin switch, not during a match, but during a transfer. Now, I'm going to be entirely honest and upfront with you. I've been pulling at the threads on this for a little while, and it is very hard to figure out, mainly because it's happening in the Romanian league. Then I don't speak Romanian, exactly what is going on here. But there at least is some smoke that Dinamo Bucharest signed one player and that his twin brother is actually the one that showed up to do the playing at Dinamo Bucharest. And according to the league itself, there is essentially no precedent for what to do next if that is actually the case, because it would seem that the club, as well as everybody else, have had the wool pulled over their eyes, so questions about potential point deduction are in play, and Dinamo Bucharest's reputation and basically just not becoming a laughingstock at the punchline of a joke, right? That is kind of on the line, but Dinamo Bucharest has also responded. But who's involved and what happened? So this first broke on Twitter a couple of days ago. I started to see different posts on Twitter and Instagram about some guy named Edgar Ye. Now, I am assuming that's how to pronounce it. To be perfectly honest, I have no idea. The guy was born in Guinea-Bissau, came up through the Sporting Academy in Portugal, spent some time in the Barcelona B team, and then basically matriculated through a couple of different leagues in France and the Netherlands. His transfer marked is a pretty patchwork display, but the guy's only 30 years old, and he last played a regular role at Trabzonspor in the 2020-2021 season, where he did play 38 matches. It kind of bounced around the Turkish league for a little while, but according to Transfermarkt, he was basically unemployed. He was a free agent, perhaps just looking for a good place to land, looking for his next move, and then allegedly signed for Dinamo Bucharest after having drifted through. But I mean, then we're talking about somebody that 4 years ago was playing in legitimate Europa League matches, somebody who 5 years ago was playing 7 matches for Lille in Ligue 1. So this is not some piddly little player off in the corner of the world somewhere. This is a dude that is significant, and as a result of his significance, he's actually a national team player for Guinea-Bissau, or at least has a couple of national team caps for Guinea-Bissau, 2 to be exact. He even has, and I can't believe I'm saying this, 1 Portugal cap from November 10th in 2017, before I would assume he switched his nationality. You are allowed to do like a one-time switch to Guinea-Bissau, which is the nation of his birth, instead of Portugal, the nation that he kind of grew up in. But while Edgar Ie has been incredibly successful, his twin brother, Adelino Ie, has been, granted, way more successful than you or I probably ever was. He's not necessarily made it to the higher levels of the game, right? He's got some periodic appearances in the Taça de Portugal, the Taça de Portugal, which is one of the Portuguese cups. But he's basically kicked around the lower leagues, never achieving a market value over like 300,000 on Transfermarkt. And according to Transfermarkt, he is currently not on a club. Also, according to Transfermarkt, dude's a right winger, right? He is not a central defender. So we are not talking about twins that are necessarily playing the same position. They are almost the same size, though. So I suppose that's not surprising for identical twins. But he is somebody that plays a completely different position. So in order to pull this off, that would require some sort of adapting on his part, which is probably the first thing that makes me think that maybe just this wasn't true. But nonetheless, we continue to dig, because the idea of this guy sending his twin brother to go pick up his contract in Romania is just too funny not to explore. In this article by the Daily Beast, they detail comments from Florin Pernea, who is allegedly the president of Dinamo Bucharest, talking about the situation, saying it seems surreal. I wondered if I was still sleeping. I started making phone calls, talking to friends, and the news is true. I can't believe it. Nobody denied it. I found out that he has a twin brother who also plays soccer. I saw another article that said Florin Pernea was the former president of Dinamo Bucharest. And this is all according to a reporter who I can't necessarily find a lot of information on. The reporter is a Romanian journalist named Daniel Shendre. He is supposed to be the person that broke this story, and that's basically who all of the articles that we're working with are kind of citing in this situation. But they did manage to get in touch with an actual Romanian Federation official who said there's no planned scenario for this situation, which obviously not. But but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here to like what's going to happen next. What you really need to know is kind of what allegedly happened at the start of this, which Adelino, he's never really played outside of Portugal, right? He's played mostly in Portugal. As you can see here, these are all Portuguese leagues that this guy's kind of been hanging out in. these are all kind of Portuguese teams. Then he went to Poland just for a little bit. But this is a guy that perhaps wouldn't have the worldly background and the lingual background of Edgarier. So apparently Dinamo Bucharest, according to these reports, when making the signing of Edgarier, were very surprised when whoever showed up wasn't able to speak anything other than Portuguese. Even though Edgarier, as we've looked at, dude played in Turkey for a long time. He was in Barcelona's youth academy. He was in France. And they're saying this dude just knew how to speak Portuguese. They were under the impression, based off of their interaction with his agency, that he would actually be able to speak English so he could more easily converse with the rest of the team. But then the person that actually showed up to play at Dinamo Bucharest had no command of the English language, which is totally fine. Just a bit of a surprise when you think you're actually getting a player signed on that can speak English. Even though this Daily Beast article is talking about that they were investigating the moment he got there, they still let him play, and he actually took the pitch in 5 different matches. Which is a problem, obviously, if you're looking at like maybe they potentially registered the wrong player and everything. But then they kind of shut him down because they were suspicious of his identity. And then allegedly the club actually asked the player that was currently at the team to present their driver's license, at which point the player allegedly denied they turned down the opportunity to present their driver's license, which is, I mean, a little suspicious just on the surface. The report of the driver's license comes from another journalist, according to Goal.com, named Emmanuel Rosu, saying that this player, right, potentially Edgarier, maybe Adelino EA, turned down offering their driver's license, and that means DNA tests were starting to be waved around. The DNA test stuff was being thrown around from inside the Romanian Football Federation as potentially a way to resolve this dispute. As if the player continues to deny access to their driver's license, how else are you going to be able to distinguish Adelino from Edgar? I mean, they are identical twins, right? And I'm surprised that one's able to passably play center back for 5 matches if it is some sort of scam being pulled off. But I think what's very clear in all of the reporting and the different journalists and the different sources all of this is coming from, nobody really has any idea what the hell is going on. Even Edgarier actually posted an Instagram story with one of the headlines of one of these stories with just 2 laughing emojis. Now, I sent Edgarier a DM on Instagram that I fully expect him to not see or not reply to, asking if they wanted to come on to Zealandism and talk about what is going on, kind of in a way to maybe investigate, see if he's like actually in Romania, if Edgarier can speak English, because the Edgarier's bio on Instagram at least has some English words in it, upon my incredibly scrupulous investigating. But the last thing that was made clear in these initial reports is that if Dinamo actually was able to prove that they were the victims essentially in this scam, that they wouldn't have or face any sort of point deduction. Then it came out the next day in an article on B Soccer that apparently Dinamo Bucharest was not on board with any of this and was preparing a lawsuit against the journalist that actually released the story, which is a pretty violent reaction. They called the statement a false, slanderous, and cancerous attack against the club and said that they were already looking into potential legal action against the people that were reporting it. They also said that Edgar Miguel EA received an international transfer certificate issued by the Turkish Federation, verified by the Romanian Football Federation, and FIFA, registered by the Professional Football League. He also received a certificate of registration in the General Immigration Inspectorate. I'm going to be perfectly honest. None of that does anything to convince me that just using your identical twin could get you through all of that, because I don't think any of those things require like a DNA test necessarily. Like you could just have Adelino show up with Edgar's ID and just be able to get through all of this nonsense. Now, if they were actually doing that, then I would assume whoever was actually playing on Dinamo Bucharest would be able to present their ID and they could get around this situation. But honestly, that is kind of the reason that I don't think this is actually happening, because if Adelino was really pretending to be Edgar, don't you think homie would have a driver's license to be able to kind of get around this situation? Like, all of this just seems weird and confusing. And I like, as much as there's a lot of smoke around this, I haven't been able to peer through and actually see any fire. To me, there's the things on both sides that seem to make it very plausible. Like on the one side, you've got all of this smoke and basically nobody able to come. I feel like it would be very easy to prove if you're Edgar EA that you're like actually there. And since this has been boiling over for 4 days, you probably would have been able to come out and prove it by now, at least comfortably, if you were taking it as seriously as your club seems to be with all these legal threats. But on the other side of things, if they were actually doing this, I feel like they wouldn't, you just swap the driver's license. But none of this stuff that the club is talking about is something that I feel like an identical twin couldn't get away with, right? But regardless of who the hell's showing up at center back and why the hell that person hasn't been playing for a little while, Dinamo Bucharest is actually in trouble and potentially going to get relegated this season. So any potential point deductions for fielding an ineligible player would be very much against their vested interest, which means fighting this story as hard as possible might be the only thing that can keep them up in the top flight of the freaking Romanian league in the first place, right? Because if they are found to have fielded an ineligible player, you'd be forfeiting 5 matches. That's not really going to help you avoid relegation. So there are so many different potential motivations at play, and all I really want to do is get both of these guys in a room and talk to them. Maybe even, I'll bring in a translator for Adelino if he really doesn't speak English, right? Because the only way to get to the bottom of this is a conversation with both of them in the same room and maybe a DNA test, but I don't even know how all of this works. I mean, we're talking about identical twins here. And there is at least a rumor going around that one is impersonating the other after a transfer that involves a significant amount of money and time and financial investment. That's an awkward spot to be in because somebody's going to come out looking like an idiot. And it's usually me. Hi, how are you?